In this video, we're going to learn how to create ordered pairs that go with each one of these dots on the unit circle. And so if you think about what's happening here, we have to go a distance of x and then a distance straight up as y in order to get that ordered pair. And so this distance is x, this distance is y, and the ordered pair would be x comma y. We just don't know what that distance is quite yet, but that's what we're going to create. So you can see this forms a little right triangle right here if you use the radius as well. And so we're going to grab that right triangle and move it down here so we can talk about it. So with this being the right angle, and we already know that this angle here is 30 degrees because we said right here that that amount was 30 degrees. Then this would have to be a 60-degree angle up in this corner. And so that forms what we call a 30, 60, 90 triangle. That's a special right triangle that has some definite properties to it. And if you don't remember about 30, 60, 90 or 45, 45, 90 triangles from geometry, I've got a video called Special Right Triangles that you'll want to watch if you don't understand where I'm getting these numbers from. So you might want to stop this video and go find the Special Right Triangles video and make sure you get a good handle on that first. Okay, recall that this is a unit circle, so we know that the radius is 1, and so that puts this side as being a length of 1. What we know about a 30, 60, 90 right triangle is that if the hypotenuse is 1, this is the hypotenuse, this over here would be the short leg, and this would be the long leg. And if you go from hypotenuse to short leg, you cut it in half. And so this is an amount of 1/2. And that's just always the rule on 30, 60, 90 triangles, that the short leg will be half of the hypotenuse. Then the relationship between the short leg and the long leg, it's a square root of 3 relationship, and we're getting bigger, so we want to multiply 1/2 by the square root of 3. That's always the relationship with 30, 60, 90s when you're going from the short leg to the long leg. And so if we shorten that or simplify it a little bit, we have square root of 3 over 2, and that is what this side is. It's square root of 3 over 2. Because of that, we now have figured out what our x and y are, and we now know what our ordered pair is for this dot over here. To get to that dot, we have gone a distance of square root of 3 over 2 to the right, and we've gone a distance of 1/2 up. And so that dot goes with the ordered pair, square root of 3 over 2, comma 1 over 2. Now let's focus on the 60-degree angle and consider what that ordered pair associated with this point might be. Well, we go a distance of x away from the origin, and then we go a distance of y away from the origin, and so that point will also be some kind of x-y coordinate. And so if we look at the triangle that we've created now, that degree right there would be 60, and we've got another 30, 60, 90 just turned differently. So if we take that triangle and move it out of the way there, then what we have is a 60-degree angle down in the corner and a 30-degree angle up here, because the three angles have to add to 180, so if we have a 90 and a 60, the other one has to be 30. And that changes where our short leg, long leg, and hypotenuse are. So we've got short leg down here, our long leg over here, and our hypotenuse over here. And so, as we said before, we know that the radius is 1 from our unit circle, and so our hypotenuse is also 1. The relationship in a 30-60-90 between the hypotenuse and the short leg is that the short leg is 1/2 of the hypotenuse. So the short leg, I can't really fit it down there, but it is 1/2. The long leg, as we've established before, is 1/2 times the square root of 3. So our long leg is square root of 3 over 2. So putting that back in our xy coordinate system, our x is along the bottom, so that's our 1/2. And our y is along the right side, which is square root of 3 over 2. So what you're going to find is that those are going to be the two key numbers that we always use in a unit circle. And so we're going to have these two numbers that you could just memorize to know that all 30s and 60s will always be two key numbers of 1/2 and a square root of 3 over 2. You will not have to recreate the 30-60-90 triangles ever again. I just wanted to explain how those numbers came about so that you didn't think they were just random. But now that we know that it's going to be some combination of 1/2 and square root of 3 over 2, we will always use those two numbers when we're at any 30 spot or any 60 spot. And what I mean by that is I consider all these pieces the 30s and the 60s of each quadrant, and they're not going to be measured 30 and 60 because you start at 0 and go all the way around. But that's what I mean by all my 30s and 60s. They're all going to be contained with a combination of one of these two numbers, sometimes positive, sometimes negative, sometimes one first and sometimes the other one second, and vice versa. So if you can memorize that 30-60 angles all the way around have these two numbers involved, the 1/2 and the square root of 3 over 2, that will be great. And I mean memorize them because you know how they were created. Now we're ready to put ordered pairs with all of the red and all of the green spots on our unit circle. So we've already established earlier that since this is a unit circle, when we're at this point right here, we are at 1, 0. And when we're at this point here, we're at 0, 1. When we're at this point over here, we're at -1, 0. And when we're at this point here, we are at 0, -1. And then our degrees, when we've gone all the way around, is 360 degrees. So we've established those, but now we can establish all the 30s and the 60s, all the green ones, all the way around. And you should be able to do it with a simple trick. Remember, because these all create 30-60-90 triangles, all these green markings, we only have to deal with these two numbers. 1/2 is the smaller number. Square root of 3 over 2 is a larger number because square root of 3 is just a little bit more than 1, and so that's definitely a little bit larger number. And so you can think, okay, 1/2 is smaller, square root of 3 over 2 is larger. And so what we're going to think is, if we want this ordered pair, and we know these are the only two numbers we have to work with, then we think, okay, I've gone to get to this point. In the x direction, I've gone a longer distance, and then I went a shorter distance. So I want my longer or larger number first, and my shorter number second, my smaller number. Because I went in the x direction, I went a longer distance, and in the y direction, I went the shorter distance. So it's just what I call long, short. And so you do the bigger number than the smaller number. Then you can continue on to the 60. To get to the 60, you go a shorter distance in the x direction and a longer distance in the y direction. So that's a short, long. So you put your smaller number first and your bigger number second, because the x should be shorter than the y. Then when you get over to the 120, you just got to take signs into consideration now, like negative signs, because we're not going in the positive direction anymore. So to get to the 120, to get to this point right here, we have gone a shorter x distance and a longer y distance. And so that's a short long. So we do a short number and a long number, or a small and a big. But we've also have to take in consideration what direction we went. In the x direction, we went a negative direction. So make sure that your x is negative, and the y went up, so that's a positive direction, so you don't need a negative on that one. Then to get to the 150, the ordered pair would be a longer distance for x and a shorter distance for y. So it's long, short, so the bigger number than the smaller number. And once again, you went in the x direction, you went negative, but the y direction you went positive. So I usually put the signs in afterwards and say, okay, negative x, positive y. Then when we get down to 210, you've gone a longer distance and a shorter distance. So the x is longer, the y is shorter. But sign-wise, we've gone a negative x direction and we've gone down, so we've gone in a negative y direction. So both of those should be negatives. Negative x, negative y. Then to get to 240, you just think, okay, I've gone a short distance of x and a longer distance in y. And so I want to go short, long. So the short number first, the long number second, or the bigger number second. And once again, we've gone the x direction, we've gone negative, the y direction, we've also gone negative. Then for 300, we've gone a short distance and then a long distance. And so that ordered pair should be the shorter number first and the longer number second. And then sign-wise, we've gone positive in the x direction, we've gone negative in the y direction, so only the y should be negative on this one. Then for the last one, for this dot here, we've gone a longer distance in x and a shorter distance in y, so longer x, shorter y. And the same as the other one in signs, we've gone positive x, negative y. So our y needs to be negative. So now we have done all the ordered pairs all the way around, and the only ones we're missing are the 45-degree angles, which we're going to do on a separate picture, and then we're almost done with the unit circle.